And we'll begin with the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Any support?
I support that.
Thank you. Julie?
Mr. Butkey?
Yes.
Mr. Dracos?
Yes.
Ms. McQuiston?
Yes.
Ms. Mermel?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Weedman?
Yes, thank you. Motion passes. There is no public participation tonight in our normal meeting form. However, there is a posting on our website for comment and from the public as we conduct our business this evening. So we'll begin tonight's interviews. We have two interviews. Each board member will participate with set questions. The questions are set so that every candidate receives the same questions, and it gives us an opportunity to compare what each response is from each candidate in a fair manner. So I'd ask all of you not to ask any questions other than the ones that are on the script that we've put together as a group, and that we will stick with those questions and try to keep our pacing straight. Scott will be keeping time for us tonight, and when we get down to that near that last 5 minutes, if you can kind of give us a prompt that we're getting close. You're our best timekeeper ever, so we're just going to put it in your hands. The entire interview period is not to exceed 90 minutes for each candidate, and depending on how we go, it may be less than 90 minutes, but we're capping it at 90 minutes. We'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll move into the second interview for the evening and conclude our meeting following that. Any questions? All right. That being said, I would like to welcome our first candidate. On behalf of the Lake Orion Community Schools, I'd like to welcome Heidi Mercer to this interview for the position of superintendent.
Hello.
Mercer, good. How you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Thank you.
Is currently Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for Lake Orion Community Schools here in Lake Orion. And I'll just take another moment to describe our format. The interview takes up to 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give the candidate an opportunity to ask any questions of the board and to also make a closing statement. And as I said, Scott Taylor will let us know when we're closing in on the end of that time period and keep us on track. As the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, it will be doing so through the lens of the candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify the candidate that best fits this profile, which board members have at hand. Audience feedback may be submitted through an online form found on the district's homepage. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education as representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process. While we are not seeking recommendations as to which individual should be hired, we would like your input as to the strengths and reservations about each of the candidates. All right, so that being said, I will begin with opening questions. And Ms. Mercer.
Hello.
While we've had the opportunity to review your application materials, those watching from home have not. Please briefly review your background and share what caused you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity of meeting with you tonight. I sincerely appreciate that. I have been with the district for 24 years now. I actually student taught in Lake Orion at the high school, and I knew then that I wanted to be part of Lake Orion Community Schools. I was hired as a special education teacher at Walden Middle School. And it was there that I had a principal that saw that I had some leadership skills. And it was in that position that I got to experience and lead a few firsts through the district. I implemented a summer school in the National Junior Honor Society as a teacher. I then went on to be the assistant principal at Walden Middle School and principal. And while in those positions, I was part of a team that actually got to research and develop and implement our team concept that we have at the middle level. I also got to supervise and be a part of the building renovations that supported our team concept at that point in time. And then now I serve as Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning and have been in this role for the past 12 years. And in this role, I also have accomplished a few firsts for the district, just to name a few. Implemented the all-day, everyday kindergarten program, curriculum maps that were new at that point in time, instructional coaches, and our PD model. Again, hopefully throughout the interview, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about some of the other things I've accomplished as well. I've been involved at the ISD level, serving on several committees, as well as their planning committee and throughout the community. I'm proud to say that I have two girls that have gone through the district. Ellie graduated 3 years ago, and I have a senior this year, Elise, who will receive her diploma at the end of July. Why Lake Orion? Honestly, I have been here my whole career, and that has been purposeful. I enjoy this district. This district is something very special. And I know that because I have had the opportunity to talk with my colleagues, and I realize that we have a supportive community that truly, I think, prioritizes education. We have a board that, since I have been in this district, has been very supportive of our administration and our teachers. And I believe that Lake Orion truly has a culture and provides an exemplary education for students. And that's what I want to be a part of.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Given the immediate challenges of being ready for COVID-19 / the coronavirus contingencies and what is likely to be a significant reduction to our foundation allowance, among other more typical challenges, please tell us how you would hit the ground running on July 20th and ensure that we are fully prepared for a positive and productive school year.
I think there are several aspects to that. First of all, we do know that public education is once again facing potential large budget crises. And we have to be sure that we are ready for that and are able to have a balanced budget. In looking at that, I believe that we have to be prepared to make potential reductions if necessary. And typically what we have done is those have come in phases. I think it's important to include all of our stakeholders in those decisions, gathering input as to what they think should be involved in these reductions. I also think that along with looking at the budget and reductions, there's also an opportunity, and we've seen this many times in this district, where there's opportunity that comes through tough times. And so it would not only be in looking at the budget and in considering reductions, but what types of things can we do to enhance and increase our revenue? That would also be taken into consideration regarding the budget. So no doubt, the budget is certainly an obstacle that we are certainly, I think, facing for sure in the fall, if not before then. Additionally, we don't know at this point in time what school is going to look like in the fall. We currently have a planning committee that has been established. We need to make sure that we are prepared for all scenarios, whether that be in person, whether that be remote, or whether it be a hybrid. And it is important that we have all three or more of those scenarios planned out. I also believe that during the year next year, there could be potential, very likely potential, that the way we start may not be the way that we end the school year. And so it's going to be critical that we are well prepared for the fall and we are able to deal with each and every one of those scenarios. In the next couple of weeks, I intend to reflect on the things that we have done, because there are a lot of things that I think that can be learned from that. But I think those two things are very, very critical as we deal with this situation that we're in, along with ensuring that we have a balanced budget, that we have scenarios that we are ready for in the fall, and making sure that our students are safe and our families feel comfortable with whatever the fall may look like. So there's no doubt we have our challenges ahead, but I'm also a firm believer that regarding those challenges, that's also when we also find opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Based on your research of Lake Orion and your many years working knowledge of Lake Orion and what you know, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us address these challenges?
First and foremost, I will say it is budget. That is the challenge that I think all public education, we have seen this come and go more times than not, but it is a challenge. And it is a challenge that I think we have to be prepared for and we have to realize. With that being said, I do think that in dealing with the budget, again, it's being prepared. So it's recognizing those things that we may have to do differently in order to be able to balance the budget, and making sure that throughout the process, the classroom is held as harmless as possible. But at the end of the day, we know that we have to be fiscally responsible and we have to have a balanced budget. And that is for sure one of the things that we continue to face. And it seems to cycle every so many years. And here I think we're going to find ourselves here again, where we're going to have to make some hard decisions. So that for sure, I think, is going to be a challenge. The other thing that I think that will continue to be a challenge as well, and we've discovered this more and more through this pandemic, is making sure that we provide an equitable education. Equity has certainly been an issue. We have known this. However, through this time, I think it's become even more glaring. And we have to do everything we can as a district to make sure that all of our students have equal opportunity in their education, whether that be making sure they have a device, making sure that they have access to Wi-Fi, all of those things to make sure that they have what they need in order to be adequately educated. So again, I think those are the top things that we will be faced with. And certainly, as always, I think the other thing is making sure that our students remain safe and comfortable in school. That's always been a top priority, and I think something that is always on the minds of public educators. Now we have a little bit of a different spin to it. Before, it was more of, we've seen tragedies happen, I think, throughout the nation. And now it's a different kind of safety. It's making sure that our students are healthy. And so those are the challenges that I think that we face. I think in regards to what do I bring to, be able to handle those challenges, we've gone through budget issues before. I'm very comfortable with the process that this district has adopted in making sure that we get input from all of our stakeholders, meeting with our staff, meeting with administration, and bringing recommendations to the board that, again, make sense. It's also been very, very critical, I think, that when we know we have to make reductions, we also prioritize and look when we can possibly maybe bring those things that we had to reduce back. And we've done that before. And I think that is critical. So I've been through that process several times, and it is something that I think has worked. Certainly, regarding equity, again, I think that is something that, we've had to think differently about just these past few months, and making sure that all of our students have what they need. And that has been something that has been part of each of my positions in the district, from serving as a special education teacher to the position that I have now, making sure that we're taking opportunities that are provided to us from grant funding and other resources within the community to help support our students. And safety, that has been an area, again, where I have had in my different roles, from teacher being directly in the classroom to this position now, making sure that we have a broad level of safety plans and procedures, and that those are revisited, studied regularly, so that we ensure that everybody is prepared and comfortable, should something happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So our next category is district relations, and Mr. Scott Taylor will be asking these questions. Scott?
Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Scott.
Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to this Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
I am a firm believer as well that relationships are a key to any successful organization. And I think the way to building relationships is making sure that I am visible, that I have an open door, that I communicate regularly with all stakeholders, and that I am there for people. I have really tried to work on building relationships that I get to know people. I get to know their families, their strengths, their weaknesses, their desires, what they are hoping for. And I think that is critical to get to know the person, not only in a work environment or the environment that you typically would see that person in, but also the other areas of their life, and to work on building a relationship that is one of trust and an openness, and in which that you can be honest with one another. And so those relationships are critical, I think, for any organization in order to move forward and to be a true team. You have to have relationships with people. And so those are some of the things that I have worked to do. Also making sure that I very often send personal notes to people, to staff, maybe staff that are ill or staff that have accomplished something. Many thank yous. I do handwritten notes. Again, another way of establishing a relationship that shows appreciation. I'm also one that will pick up the phone. I do send a lot of emails, but I also like to communicate with people directly because, again, I think that allows for a deeper relationship to develop. Throughout the summer, or not the summer, these past couple months, I have specifically reached out to parents that have emailed and felt that it was much better to just have a conversation. Again, building that relationship and letting them know that we're here for them, and having that willingness to take the time to communicate.
Please describe how you have successfully engaged district stakeholders, including those directly involved with the school district as well as others in the community, and share how this was a benefit to your district.
One of the things that I can think of regarding getting stakeholders involved is during our 2018 bond, there was a committee that worked extremely hard to get the bond passed. And I was part of that committee that reached out to stakeholders, went door to door, making sure that stakeholders understood the impact and the importance of the bond and getting them involved. I think we not only wanted to educate, but we wanted our community involved. And so that was a way, one of the ways that I did reach out to stakeholders to get them involved. Another way is, I created the Parent University. Again, reaching out to parents and offering them to be partners with us in their child's education. I think that it is critical that we do have parents that are involved and that it is a collaborative effort that we are educating our students. So that would be another way. I've also served on the Lake Orion Optimist Club and the Lake Orion Education Foundation. And by serving on those two organizations, it's allowed me to connect with different types of stakeholders, some parents, some just members of the community that have, again, allowed me to connect and be able to get them involved in the district. Our fourth grade recognition was one of those things that the Optimist Club sponsored. But again, pulling in different stakeholders to see all of the greatness that our district has to offer. So I really think that There are many ways to involve stakeholders, being staff, students. In fact, just recently, this past week, I reached out to, with the help of Michelle Curitin, our diversity coordinator, I had the opportunity to meet with 4 different groups of students because I wanted to hear straight from them how we could improve how we are serving them in our district. What things are we doing well and what things can we improve in? So again, I look for opportunities to connect with people, whether it be parents, students, staff. So those are some examples.
Okay. How do we create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically, and aligning our operating plans to achieve strategic outcomes?
I think that really involves making sure that, you know, we're all in alignment. And I think in order to be in alignment, you have to start off with having a conversation, an open conversation with community stakeholders, with our staff. What do they see as part of our goals and our strategic planning? And working from there, again, I think to gather all of that input, bringing it down to a working committee to then put a plan together that is going to represent the greater good and the impact, the input from the larger community. So again, and it also comes back to, I think, regularly communicating. Once that plan is developed and put in place, there needs to be updates regarding that plan, where we are at, how do people think that we are doing in regard to that plan, going back and checking, is the plan still making sense? Do we need to readjust? So it's that back and forth, I think, dialogue, and not just right at the very beginning, but it has to be throughout as well, as we're developing goals and strategic plan, to make sure that we are all still understanding where we're going and how we're doing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Our next category is political awareness, and Nate Bucky will be asking these questions.
Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Nate.
Let's talk politics. What impact do you feel every student succeeds at legislation is having on Michigan school districts?
Can you repeat that? It's a little muffled.
Sure. What impact do you feel the every student succeeds at legislation is having on Michigan's schools?
Well, I think that there's some improvement that can come when it comes to legislature and dealing with our public schools. And the ESA Act is just the latest act. We've had several in my 24 years, and this is the latest one. And honestly, I think there is much to be done in regards to legislation and public education. I do realize that a lot of our legislators maybe don't understand the impact of the decisions they are making. I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we have good relations with our legislators and our representatives to ensure that we have open communication and that we can dialogue back and forth about the things that they are thinking about, and making sure that they understand the impact of their decisions. I also think that it's very important that our community understands what is currently happening in legislation. And this is always something that it's, you know, it's forever changing. And I think it's important that we make sure that our stakeholders are aware and are prepared to speak to our representatives again, to make sure that they understand the impact of the decisions that they are making. I have made it a point to reach out to our representatives. Specifically, a few examples of that have been, I have personally met with Representative Riley several times. This was when they were debating Common Core and thinking about taking Common Core back out after it had been implemented and districts had, really invested thousands and thousands of dollars in these new standards. And I met with him personally to make sure that he understood the impact that that may have and to understand what the standards really were. I gave him a copy of all of the standards, making sure that, again, he understood the impact that this would have on our students. And I do think that it is critical that we need legislation that is going to support public education. There have been things that have been supportive, and there are parts of the ESA Act that are supportive of public education. However, there's a lot of improvement, I think, that can be done. And certainly in the next several months, it will prove critical that we are having these conversations with our legislation as we move into the fall.
Thank you. When you look at the political climate of education in Michigan, what is your biggest concern? And as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits Lake Orion Community Schools and public education throughout the state?
My biggest concern regarding legislation is that many times public educators are not consulted and are not brought to the table when some of these things are being discussed. And the people who are making the ultimate decisions do not clearly understand the impact of those decisions. And I have had the opportunity of meeting with some legislators that have admitted and have sought us out wanting clarification. But I think usually it's votes are made, decisions are made without truly understanding the impact. And that is where I think we have the biggest issue is we have people who are coming up with ideas that think that they are good ideas, and they may sound like good ideas, but they don't understand the impact of how those ideas get implemented and the impact on particular districts. I think in order to improve that, and as superintendent, I would be sure to establish those relationships with all of our representatives. It's about making sure that you are staying abreast of all of the legislation that is being thought about, that is being voted upon, and making sure that you are aware of the things that are coming so that you have an opportunity to, again, connect with the people who are ultimately going to be making those decisions. I also think it's critical that, in this district, we have, a legislation committee, and we regularly communicate, about the latest things coming up. I think that's critical because our community needs to be involved and needs to be able to reach out to our legislators as well. And that is the job, I believe, of the superintendent, to make sure that our community is aware and to make sure that we are reaching out to those representatives and making sure that they know what decisions they will be making and how it will impact all of our students.
Thank you. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
You know, I think that has been mixed, honestly. I am a firm believer that, you know, whatever gets tested, gets measured, and gets held to a different standard. So I do believe that absolutely we as public educators should be held accountable for educating our students. There's no doubt about that. The question is, how do we go about that? And that is where I think we have room to grow. I believe that standardized testing does have its place. However, we also have to recognize that standardized testing is a snapshot of a student on a given day. And so to have all of our eggs in that basket and have so much weight placed on that, I honestly don't believe is fair. I also don't believe that you know, a teacher's evaluation should be directly related to that. Again, there should be accountability, but we have to recognize that our students come to us at all different levels. And the way that our system is set up right now, it's almost like we are a factory. We're not a factory. We are educating young human beings, and that system of accountability needs to account for that. So again, taking into consideration that our students come to us at different points and places. Now, one thing that I think that is part of this process that helps is we've been able to implement local assessments, which I think again, doesn't have all of our eggs in the one standardized basket, because again, that's only one given day. I think MDE, we were sort of on the right path, and I hope we get on that path again of making sure that when we standardize test, we need to do that at different points in the year so that it's just not one snapshot, and that you know, we're measuring student growth throughout the year. So I do think that, you know, we absolutely need to be held accountable. But the way that we're doing it, I think, could be improved a little bit, again, to ensure that we take into account that that we are educating humans, and that we need to make sure that we are also taking into account not only our students' academics, but their social emotional well-being. And that's something that's not accounted for in a standardized test. And it needs to be. That needs to be recognized. And it's just not at this point in time. It's all about the, you know, how a kid is performing on that given day. And we need to look at the whole package. That's how we educate our students. And really, that's how we should be measuring our growth as a whole package.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next section of questions is on leadership attributes, and Dana Mermel will be asking these questions. Dana.
Okay. Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
Okay, so leadership attribute. Please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might have to vary from that style.
Okay. I would say my style in leading is collaborative. I think it's very important to work as a team. More minds are better than one in any kind of project. And so I think it's about collaboration. I think also my leadership style is one in which that there is the empowerment of others, I think is very, very important. Looking at people and recognizing their strengths and taking advantage of those strengths, again, to work on whatever it is that, whatever initiative it is. So empowering others, allowing others, I think, to grow. I think the other part of my leadership style, I would say, is open and honest communication with feedback. I think it's very, very important that people feel comfortable to be open and honest with myself, and that I can have an open and honest communication with them as well. Some examples of leadership would be, I've mentored several teachers and administrators throughout the district, and allowing them, again, to take risks and to grow, making sure as well that I'm encouraging them and providing feedback, but also allowing them, again, to kind of spread their wings, I think is very, very important. Our professional development, I think of all of our instructional coaches. That's another area where, my leadership style has been, coming to them with some thoughts on what I am thinking, but again, having an open discussion about what are they thinking, how is the best approach that they feel regarding, a professional development series that I am thinking about. And so it's really making sure, I think, that I would say it's collaborative and open, honest communication, and working as a team and empowering others, I think is critical, because the more that you do that, the bigger the team that you get. And everybody then, again, has input and feels a part of the whole organization. And I think that is critical, that people have to feel valued. They have to feel that they are contributing to the greatest extent possible. There have also been times where I look at people who may be a little hesitant on getting involved, and that's where I encourage them to get involved. And I several times I've gone to people and say, I need you, or we need you, the district needs you to do this, this, and this, or to become involved because you have this particular skill. And so I think that's important too, is to look at those who may not necessarily jump right to the table and want to become involved. But those people also have a lot of input and a lot of strengths too. So part of that leadership style that I would describe that I have is inclusive, and making sure that everybody feels valued and has a part.
Hey, thank you. How do you lead in situations where you don't have official authority over people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
I know I have. Let me think of a particular
Okay.
situation for sure. All right, this is a silly one, but this one comes to my mind, and I have no idea why. We have had. I'm thinking of partnerships that we have had, and I have had throughout my years here in the district. And there have been times where, for instance, the leadership, high school leadership, in our homecoming parade. I remember several years ago, it was a big issue. The kids were upset that they could not throw candy at the parade. And so while I didn't have direct say over that, I knew that it was something that meant a lot to the kids. And this was, for some reason, just a real big issue. And it was within the village that for safety reasons, candy was not to be thrown. Well, through having a discussion with the manager, with the chief of police, we worked through that, and now we get to throw candy. It has to be contained, right? And every year I say, please make sure you listen to the rules, because this is something that we've had to compromise on. So that's one example. Like I said, I have no idea why that comes to my mind. But there have been, I think, when I'm not in a role to make the absolute decision, that I may not have, a supervisory role, and am able to make that call regarding whatever it is. It comes down to, honestly, back to, again, having a conversation, understanding why something is the way that it is, or why someone believes the way that they do, and being able to see their perspective, being able to communicate what I am thinking, and then see, is there an agreement that we can come to that maybe it is something that needs to be changed and implemented differently. But again, I think it goes back to, it has to go back to that conversation, and it has to go back to, respecting each other, and a willingness to consider someone else's point of view.
All right, thank you. What are the key elements of a high-functioning board and superintendent governance team relationship? And what are your plans for establishing and maintaining this in Lake Orion?
I think first and foremost, the biggest thing I think for me would be is that we recognize we're all on the same team, working toward the same goal. And I think that's very, very important. While, we may have differing opinions or differing thoughts, it's really important that we all see that we're all on the same team, and we all are working toward the same goal of providing our students the best education possible. I think the other thing that, in regards to a superintendent and a board relationship, is that there are no surprises, that if, I see something coming that, it's important that you're aware of it before it comes. So again, it's being proactive. It's being able to have that, again, back to open, honest communication. I think it's believing in one another, and also recognizing that, being able to trust one another, I think is very, very important. And I think also, again, being able to, have open and honest communications. Those things, I think, are critical for a relationship between the superintendent and the board, and recognizing that that relationship really sets a foundation for the district as a whole. And it's critical that our staff and our community sees that we're together and we're working together, like I said, all for the good of our students and the education that we're providing, which absolutely benefits, our community. And so the things that I would do, again, would be making sure that I'm proactive, that I am communicating regularly, and I'm open and honest about the things that are happening.
Okay, thank you. Our next section is concerning instruction and curriculum, and Birgit McQuiston will be asking these questions.
Good evening, Heidi.
Hi, Birgit.
What experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic factors?
Can you repeat that, Birgit? You froze in the middle of it. Sorry.
I'm sorry too. Okay. What experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
Okay, that is something that I think we're very proud of in the district, is that while I have been in this position, it has certainly been a team effort. However, it has been something that I have stressed that we specifically know how each of our students are achieving individually as well as in groups. So we take a look at that data. We review that data by marking period, again, not only by students individually, but by different groups that our students are in. So our socioeconomic students, our different ethnicities of students, gender of students, male, female. It's very important, I think, to analyze the data in that way and to make sure that all of our students are achieving. Now, of course, throughout my time here, there have been groups, and there are groups that are not achieving where I think that they should be achieving. And so it's making sure that we are studying that, looking at the data, and then zeroing in on what is it that we need to do in order to make sure that we close the achievement gap with that particular group of students. So some of the things that I have done in the district is, again, making sure that the data is gathered and analyzed on a regular basis. I feel that that is key. The other thing is making sure that we have interventions in place to deal with those particular students that are not achieving where they want them to be. So, for instance, since I have been in this position, there have been interventionists that have been added at each of the buildings using grant dollars, again, to work with students who need a little extra support and who we need to work to close that achievement gap. The other thing that we also look at is making sure that we are providing services, not only academic by interventionists and looking at our instruction. Our core instruction has been another thing that we have really looked at and studied with each of these groups, making sure that what we're doing initially in the classroom, if it's not working, how can we ensure that we are meeting the needs of these particular groups of students? So again, in the past, we have done professional development, we've done book studies, we've done particular strategies that work with different groups of students that are struggling in particular areas. So looking at closing the achievement gap by making sure that we are addressing those issues inside the classroom as well as providing outside of the classroom. The other thing I think that is very important that I have done is making sure that we're including the parents. And that's where Parent University comes in, that we are communicating with parents where the deficit is at, what we're seeing, and what we are doing as a district to support their student, but how they can support their student as well, and we can work on it collaboratively. Grants have been a large part of this district, making sure that we are taking every opportunity to pursue every grant that is out there that we qualify for, because again, that's where we can provide these extra services that our students need. And I feel that that is very, very important, that not only do we have to ensure that what is happening in that primary core instruction, that is solid, but that we also have intervention and services beyond that are in place that are specifically target that particular student's need. The other thing is we've been focusing as well on social emotional, where you know that the past couple of years that has been a huge issue. And there are students in particular groups that is a struggle area, and we have to address that in order for us to close that achievement gap. If we're not meeting social emotional needs, the achievement gap is not going to close. And so it's making sure that we're paying attention to that as well. It's a whole, making sure that we're educating the whole child. And those are things that I think specifically our special education is another example of where we have really worked hard to close the achievement gap. And I'm very proud to say that, working with Julie Gutman and her staff, that we have been closing that achievement gap. And we are, in the county, we're one of the leads in the county for our students, our special education students performing. And again, I think that comes down to zeroing in on what our students need and being able to get them specifically what they need.
Thank you for that answer. Here's my second question.
Okay.
How have you balanced the need to challenge the status quo in education through innovation and reform while maintaining and building on what is working?
I think that is very, very important. As the first part is you have to make sure what you're doing is working. And oftentimes I think that is potential to overlook that and just continue doing things when you don't really know if it's working. And so that is one area where I have worked with teachers and admin and our coaches to really, again, when we're analyzing the data and surveying and pulling the qualitative data as well as the quantitative, making sure that what we are doing is working. And if it's not, how can we improve that? What specifically is not working? Because another area I think that sometimes we fall trapped to in public education is we throw the whole thing out, when in reality it may be only one piece that needs tweaking. And that's, again, where I think the collaboration with our teachers, our students even, and parents, again, can give us insight as to what is working, what is not working. Regarding innovation, I think it is critical that we continue to evolve with our students. This is one thing that I think honestly is an issue in education. We don't evolve as quickly as our students need us to. And so it's looking for those opportunities to push education to really meet our current students' needs, and to be sure that we're not only doing it just to say that we're doing it. We're not just jumping on the latest bandwagon to say that we're on the latest bandwagon, but to really make sure that what we're doing is truly what our students need and what is relevant at that point in time. And that's where I really think the innovation comes in, is making sure that we're continuing to evolve with our students. And I think, we've seen this, I've implemented, our STEM programming. That is something that is current, it is relevant. I don't know that that's going to be current and relevant in 5 years, but I know that it is now, and our students that we are educating now need that. So in 5 years, it may be something else. But again, I think it's making sure that I'm staying current and aware of what our students need so that they have those skills when they get out of school. And it's being able to It's being able to implement and evolve. And that is not always easy. But I think in this district, it's because of the support that we've provided our teachers through our professional development model that we have been able to implement some innovative ideas, and we've been very successful because we support our teachers.
Okay, and my third question, which you actually touched on a little bit just now, but here it goes. How have you addressed the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
Obviously, I think this is key because that is the root of our business, is making sure that when our students leave us, that if they choose to go into a career, they go into that career. If they choose, that they're job ready. If they choose to go to college, that they are ready for college. I think we have to make sure that we are providing our students opportunities. And that, I think, is key, that students have the opportunity to experience many different things that relate to careers, relevant careers, current careers, college. What are the colleges requiring when our students get out of school? So again, it's making sure that we are able to provide those opportunities for students to experiment while they're in school. They need to do that while they have plenty of time. It's not costing parents tuition, and that they're able to get a sense of what it is that they would like to do. And that's where, again, I think that we have to continue to evolve, that what we're doing today may not be what we're doing in 5 years, because the world is changing very, very quickly. And we have to make sure that our students are ready when they get out of school, that they're ready for whatever they want to go into, whether it be college, whether it be a job. And that's where I think, things like OTEC, our OTEC program, comes into play. All of the things that we are offering career tech-wise at our high school, our different programs that we are offering there. And we're really starting to focus on as well, working on elementary and middle school. What are some things there that we can do to start opening students' eyes to careers and jobs that are out there, because it is forever changing. And so starting that earlier, I think, is critical.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Our next section has to do with finance, and Jake Singer will be asking these questions. Jake.
Good evening, Heidi.
Hi, Jake.
Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
Well, being here for 24 years, I've had to go through several rounds of budget reductions and budget cuts. And of course, it is never easy. But again, I think it's a process that I firmly believe that the district has established, and it has worked. And I think with that process, it is making sure that we are gathering the input from all of our stakeholders, so community, staff, students, and gathering that, if there are budget reductions that need to be made, what are people's thoughts? It then comes down to looking at our operations and putting some recommendations together for the board, having a conversation with the board as to how we are going to move forward in balancing the budget. And again, making sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can to keep the budget reductions away from the classroom. That is critical. And I know that, that has been something that this district has held near and dear. And I would, I would absolutely continue to promote that. The other thing that I think that is important is, again, when you're going through these struggles, that it's not always about the reduction, but also are there opportunities for revenue enhancement that we can take a look at that can minimize or help to minimize the reductions that we need to make. So it's taken a look at, is there any opportunity there that we may have not otherwise studied? That because we're going through hard times, you have to examine every single thing that you're doing. And honestly, I think that sometimes that is a great thing to do. You justify why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it, and to make sure that we're as efficient and effective as possible. And like I said, making sure that we're also taking advantage of any opportunities that may come. It's a time where you have to think outside the box and entertain all ideas. It's kind of like a brainstorming exercise where no idea is a bad idea necessarily, but it's an opportunity to really think about things. And so the other thing that I think that it's important regarding the budget is, again, as you're making reductions, it also is taking into account that, when times get back to being better, what then are the things that we need to look back at, and what are the things that we need to put back in place. So it is a process.
Thank you. What opportunities do you believe budget limitations present in tough financial times? What are your 3 top priorities?
In tough budget times, I think obviously the top priority first is student safety and security. If you're not, if we have students that do not feel safe, and we have families that do not feel comfortable sending their children to school, obviously there's no sense in teaching, because students have to feel safe. And so in looking at the budget, that is one thing that has to be a priority. We have to make sure that our students are safe. The other thing I think is making sure that, again, we do everything we possibly can to not impact the classroom. So what are things that we can reduce or do differently as well? It's not always about a reduction, but are there things that we can do maybe differently that we haven't considered before? That, again, does not impact the classroom. And then I would say making sure that, again, we are providing an equitable and a well-rounded education, so that throughout the budget reductions, that we're not hurting any one particular group or any one particular program, that we're making sure that the budget reductions we are doing make sense and are balanced, I guess I would say.
Thank you. What ideas might you explore to develop more revenue streams for Lake Orion Community Schools? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district in your career?
I think, again, this is as hard as it is to go through budget reductions. I think, again, it is an opportunity to really zero in on the things that you are doing and justify them. And what opportunities may we be missing? I do think that at the end of the day, it is about students, and we want students in our district. We want to retain students, and we want to bring new students to our district. And so I do think there are opportunities in programming that we can continue to explore. Ideas where, that there are programs where we could allow students outside the district, if we did not fill with students in the district, that students outside could apply to a particular program. And I think that there are some ideas there that we have not, tapped in on, I would say, to a large extent at this point. But I do have several ideas regarding programming and where we could potentially extend or expand our programming, and even maybe partnering with other districts where they would offer one particular program, we would offer another. And again, it's about, providing opportunities to students so that we draw students to Lake Orion. In regards to procuring additional funds, I will say that, again, throughout my time, I've written several grants. Now, that is mainly Carrie's job. I might pass that baton to her, but we look at every potential grant and funding source to take advantage of. And I think that is important, that we take advantage of those things. And in regards to, I think bringing in additional funds, it's about our program. And that is something that I'm very proud of, that our district has become a district where students want to come, parents want to be part of this district, and staff want to work here. And that, I think, is a huge benefit to the district. You have to have a solid program and be able to offer something that people truly want, and it is of quality. And I think that to this point, we have been able to do that. And we could expand that, I do believe.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Our last category of questions is regarding staff and personnel, and Steve Dracos will be asking these questions. Steve? Can you hear us?
No.
Heidi, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Heidi. Please describe your most successful experience in building a high school performance work team. For example, I'm looking for teamwork here. Please, to repeat the question, please describe your most successful experience in building a high performing work team.
Okay.
Thank you.
The first one that comes to my mind that I am extremely proud of is our instructional coaches. I would say that no doubt that is a high performing team. And that has been something that I think has grown in the district. When I first came into this position, it was just myself. And one of the things that I noticed immediately is that it was a big job, and I really wanted to provide more direct support to teachers. And the way I felt to do that was through the opportunity of providing instructional coaches that would then provide professional development to support our teachers. And so, I worked hard to find the right people for those positions, making sure that they could work as part of a collaborative team and that they shared the same philosophy that I did, in making sure that every resource that we have should first go to the classroom. And so it wasn't about, at that point in time, with it only being me, sure, I could have used a assistant or, something of sorts, but that was, my belief was the teachers needed to be directly supported. And so I am very proud of the instructional coaching team that has been established, and they are a very high performing group. And honestly, they are part of the reason why we continue to do very well. And we have teachers that want to come to Lake Orion because they know that they are going to be supported. And I strongly believe that that's a team that it's a dynamite team, and I'm very proud of that.
Well, I thank you for your thorough answer. My next question is, please speak to your experience in labor relations and working with employee unions, and describe the nature of your relationship with the union leaders that we have now.
I've been on our contract maintenance committee for 16 years. I first entered that committee as a principal of Walden and have been on there ever since. So it's been 16 years that I've served on CMC, and I'm very proud to say that we have a very collaborative relationship with our teachers union and the district administration, and I think that is key. And I think part of having that relationship is, again, believing that we need to work collaboratively, being able to have open, honest communications, and knowing that we're all on the same team working toward the same goal. So I've served on that committee for 16 years, been directly a part of negotiating, been directly a part of writing contract language. I've worked not only on the committee, but in close quarters with the HR assistant superintendent, and so that is an area that I have enjoyed, and I feel over the years have become very confident in. I would say that I have very strong relations with our union and our union president. And we get along very well. And again, I think part of that is being able to be open and honest with one another, having difficult communication or having difficult conversations when we need to. But we both know each other well enough that we know that we have the district and students in our best interests. And so I have very positive relations with our union president.
All right, thank you. And my final question, Heidi, how would you interact with, or in this case, how have you interacted with central administrators and building principals in a district of our size? And the follow-up question to that would be, how would you strike a balance between giving them the support and automate the need to lead effectively while holding them accountable as appropriate and necessary? And I'd be more than happy to repeat that question. I know it's a long question.
Yeah, I have had the opportunity for the past, I think it's been, I don't know, maybe 10 years. It's been a good portion of this position where I have directly supervised and evaluated all of our building principals and some of our directors that we currently have. And I think it's very, very important to make sure that whoever I am supervising knows the expectations that I have. I think that that is only fair. And knowing that, I'm there to support them with whatever it is that they may be going through. And knowing that we're working together as a team, again, trying to accomplish a goal. And, there are times where there has to be difficult conversations that are had. I think that is important that, again, people can't grow if they don't know where they need to grow. The other thing is, I think, making sure that we have a relationship where if they're struggling in a particular area or they need support from me or I need to do something differently, that they feel comfortable enough to communicate that with me. And I think there has to be a balance between holding building administrators accountable, but yet also allowing them to be empowered and allowing them to run their building and meet their building's needs as they see fit. I think that's very, very important as well.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve. All right, so Heidi, we've had all the chances to ask you the questions. Now it's your turn to ask us any questions you have, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, honestly, I don't have any questions. I have carefully read your candidate profile as to what you're looking for in your next superintendent. And I do know the district intimately. However, I have prepared a closing statement that I would like to read. I chose to write this statement to allow me to reflect on this important decision and opportunity, and to ensure that I leave nothing on the table and go away with, I wish I would have said that, but I didn't. I appreciate the Board of Education giving me this opportunity to interview, and for your service and dedication to the Lake Orion Community Schools and the community. For the past 24 years, I have been committed and dedicated to LOCS. I have served as a special education teacher, assistant principal, and now superintendent of teaching and learning. The experience in these different positions has prepared me for the next level as superintendent. Furthermore, the district's culture, staff, community support, and Board of Education commitment makes this district a special place to be. I've had the honor of serving this school community for my entire career, and I wish to continue in an even more impactful capacity. I want to serve as the next Lake Orion Schools superintendent to continue to enhance the district and the education it offers. I take great pride in being a Lake Orion Dragon and working collaboratively with others in the best interest of students and the district. With my leadership, there have been many enhancements in the education Lake Orion Community Schools offers. Through having a hands-on presence in the classroom, I have guided student achievement scores to be in the top 10 within Oakland County, the implementation of instructional coaches, STEM programming, standards-based grading at the elementary and middle school level, new courses at the middle school and high school level, revised and improved instructional practices, established a culture of professional growth and development, created Parent University to support parents in their child's education, worked with the Board of Education to establish the Board Curriculum Committee to oversee the strategic area of student achievement, and mentored several teachers and administrators. I have immersed myself into the community, being actively involved and visible. I was in on the beginning implementation of Dragon on the Lake, served as an active member of the Lake Orion Optimist Club, currently serve as a trustee for the Lake Orion Education Foundation, have coordinated and participated in several community conversations over the years, worked closely with the Lake Orion Township Library, and took a lead role in the passing of the 2018 school bond, to name just a few. I am deeply committed to this community. When I remarried, my husband had a house in Fenton. We specifically purchased a condo in Lake Orion so that I could remain rooted in the community. The one qualification that is unique to me as a candidate is that I am currently the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for Lake Orion Community Schools. Being an internal candidate, I bring true working knowledge of Lake Orion Community Schools. I am the candidate that provides the Board of Education with a proven track record that the board has witnessed and observed firsthand. My candidacy offers consistency and little transition due to a smaller learning curve. I value and realize the importance of our traditions and Lake Orion Dragon pride. With the current environment that we find ourselves in, I am the candidate that can hit the ground running. Being in the district for many years has allowed me to build relationships with students, staff, and community. These relationships have been built on a foundation of trust, transparency, care, open communication, and follow-through. I am approachable, visible, engaged, and dedicated to all stakeholders. It is these qualities and character traits that are critical to ensuring a positive, collaborative climate and inclusive culture throughout the district, which positively impacts the community. I recognize that the education Lake Orion Community Schools offers has to be forward-thinking and progressive. Education must continue to evolve to meet the needs and interests of our students while maintaining a budget and being fiscally responsible. I will continue to bring forth innovative ideas to drive the district to even higher achievement. I am very proud of my career achievements thus far, but I am far from being done or resting on my laurels. I am your true dragon that you are looking for to lead this awesome district. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Heidi. As you know, we certainly appreciate your interest in this position, and the board is interviewing 6 candidates. Process will continue tomorrow and Wednesday night. Thursday night, the board will meet to determine 2 finalists who will be returning the following week for more in-depth interviews. And we'll certainly keep you apprised of that. So we appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so
Being
much.
here tonight.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye-bye.
All right. So at this point, we will take a 10-minute break. We will be back at 7:36, and shortly thereafter, we'll invite our second candidate in and get underway with him. So let's take a break right now for 10 minutes. Musary in. Hello. Can you hear us?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Excellent.
Well, let's begin. On behalf of the Lake Orion Board of Education, I'd like to welcome Mr. Michael Musary, and I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, sir.
All right. To this interview for the position of superintendent. Mr. Musary is currently superintendent of Armada area schools in Armada, Michigan. Just to describe our format, the interview may take up to 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give you an opportunity to ask questions of the board and also make a closing statement. Trustee Scott Taylor will let us know if time is becoming an issue and there is a need to pick up the pace of the responses so we can keep everybody on schedule. As the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, it will be doing so through the lens of a candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify the candidate that best fits this profile, which board members have at hand. Audience feedback may be submitted through an online form found on the district's homepage. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education as representatives of the community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process. While we're not seeking recommendations as to which individual should be hired, we would like your input as to the strengths and reservations about each candidate. And our community is very good in that regard. So with the opening questions, I'll begin, Mr. Musary. While we've had an opportunity to review your application, those watching from home have not. Please briefly review your background and share what caused you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Thanks, Jim. First of all, I want to thank the school board for selecting me for this interview. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I finally get an interview for the school district in my backyard, and as I peek over my right shoulder, I can see my backyard. It's kind of different. But personally, I have lived in Lake Orion for 31 years. We moved here in 1989, my wife and I. When we moved here, the CERT building was the high school. 2 months after we moved here, water came to Lake Orion and built thousands of homes, and one high school, one middle school, and 2 elementary schools later, Lake Orion Schools was a bigger school district, but not too big because we have one high school and we're all dragons. We raised 2 boys here. My boys graduated in 2008, 2010. We've really enjoyed the Lake Orion Community School experience. We spent 15 years very involved with the school district. If you look back in the Lake Orion Review archives, you may find my wife. She was the Region 8 Parent Volunteer of the Year back in 2000. And my participation with the students, I was fortunate enough to chaperone several events. I chaperoned trips to Chicago, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. Also, for 10 plus years, I was very involved with youth sports, and I coached baseball in the area for about 10 years, including travel baseball. I coached kids from age 8 to 22, and you may have heard of the Lake Orion Charger organization. I helped start that. I was the president the first 3 years of the organization, so I've been very involved. But me personally, professionally, I've got 27 years of experience in school administration. The first 3 years came with the South Bend Community School Corporation in South Bend, Indiana. I was their director of financial services. Now, South Bend is a very large urban school district. They had 5 high schools, 5 middle schools, and 36 elementary schools, and about a $200 million budget I was responsible for. But that's where I got my feet wet in the business and kind of fell in love with education. While working in South Bend, I still resided at 2712 Cedar Key Drive here in Lake Orion. My wife and I were having trouble with the babysitter situation. The boys were 1 and 3 at the time, so I took the first step, obtained a fantastic position. My wife, Amy, who, by the way, was my high school sweetheart, still is my sweetheart. She was unable to find a position, so 3 years later, I came back, and I've been in Armada for the last 24 years. So the first 16 years in Armada, I was the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. I was responsible for all non-curricular departments in the school district. For the last 8 years, I've been very fortunate to be the superintendent of Armada Area Schools. It has been by far the best position I've ever had. I thoroughly enjoy it. The school district has been thriving over the last 8 years. When I took over, about half of our students were going on to college, and we consider college a trade school, a 2-year community college or a 4-year university, and now close to 96% of our students are going on to college. Our academic achievement is up at every level. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just have something on the screen that says my speaker is not working. Okay. So our achievement is up at every level. Our high school has been rated the #1 academic high school in Macomb County out of 28 the last 3 years. We had the highest SAT score in the county last year, which we're very proud of. Our ACT and SAT scores have increased for 8 consecutive years. Our extracurriculars are thriving. We're doing well in robotics, athletics, and many of our clubs. For the first 100+ years of our school district, we did not have a state champion, and over the last 5 years, we've had 4. Our fund equity is at an all-time high, but I have to pause and hesitate because there's a proration remark. But at least we've built it to a point where we can handle a crisis for a year or two before we have to make major changes. Our staff morale is good. We just ended we have a 5-year teacher contract that has steps every year and a pay raise for all teachers at the top. That will end after next school year. So at this point in time, things are going fairly well in Armada, and I would like to bring that type of atmosphere to Lake Orion.
Great, thank you. Given the immediate challenges of being ready for COVID-19, the coronavirus contingencies, and what is likely to be a significant reduction to our foundation allowance, among other more typical challenges, please tell us how you would hit the ground running on July 20th and ensure that we are fully prepared for a positive and productive school year.
Let's start with a heavy question right away. Thank you. I would first look at all the data that we have in Lake Orion. I need to find out what percentage of parents feel comfortable sending their children to school, what percentage of the staff feel comfortable going back to a possible blended model, and the students themselves. I've done this in Armada. We've surveyed all 3 groups prior a couple of weeks ago, and then we're also going to survey them as we get closer to the start of the school year. If things are continuing to trend the way they are trending, today was actually the lowest COVID cases in the past 3 months. That continues to trend that way. We will be back in school either in a blended model or full-time. If we're in phase 5, we'll be in a blended model where we have to have the students here probably 50% of the time. We did a study, and we can, with a capacity, we did a social distancing capacity with our school district, and we can fit approximately 50% of our students without a problem. So I'm going to have to look at all the capacity data, the social distancing capacity data in the district to see what our options are. You're obviously going to do a lot of work between now and July 20th. So I'll be following it very closely. we also have to, you are fortunate in Lake Orion because you have a technology platform to put the education on. That's one of the challenges I have in my school district. We're going to have a platform, but it's more rural over in Armada, only 28 miles away, but we have a lot of internet connectivity issues. 25% of our families do not even have internet at home, and the ones that do, the connectivity is sometimes spotty. But I also have to look into the connectivity issues and the technology issues. I believe you have enough technology for students to have things like Chromebooks or laptops, so that's not a major issue in Lake Orion. But the connectivity, to make sure we have equity for all students, is a very important issue. So bottom line is we're going to have to look at every aspect of how we're going to offer it. We're also going to have contingency plans if there's another outbreak of COVID. We could start one way, and then midstream we might have to switch. We'll have to look at everything from busing to cleaning the buildings on a daily basis. As you're aware, the busing is probably the biggest challenge, because if you truly have to social distance, you're only going to fit between 12 to 14 students on a bus. So we'll have to come up with a strategy there, maybe suggest to parents, if possible, drive your kids to school. If not, there's no way we can do 12 different bus runs to get all the kids to school. We may have to put masks on all the children. And that's another issue. The PPE, we have to make sure we have enough PPE for whatever format we have. When I surveyed, it's kind of interesting, when I surveyed my parents, 99.4% of my parents, if the conditions are right, want to send their students back to school. 80% of my staff feel comfortable going back to school, and 75% of my students feel comfortable going back to school in the fall with face-to-face instruction. So if we do send our students back to school, the message I will be putting out, whether I'm in Armada and Lake Orion, is if you're 18 to 19, there's a pretty good chance that this will not affect you significantly if you were to get the COVID-19 virus. I believe there's 5,700, 5,800 deaths in Michigan, and ages 0 to 19, there's 4. So we need to be more conscious about protecting our staff almost than the children. I don't want to take that lightly, because we know we have children with immune deficiencies, so we have to take care of that issue too. I'm guessing the Department of Education will have to give us a waiver to allow remote learning full-time for some students that have conditions like that. They're working on it. I've been told, I was in a meeting today, and I was told that by the week of June 29th, the governor's task force will come out with a first recommendation of where we need to be. So basically, I'll be covering all the bases, looking at all the data. We're going to have to use the science to tell us what type of format we're going to have. But I really believe at a minimum we'll be face-to-face part-time.
Thank you. Based on your research of Lake Orion Community Schools, and of course your working knowledge of Lake Orion Community Schools as a member of the community, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us address these challenges?
So first and foremost, our number one challenge for the next several years is going to be finance. Until the economy is back full-time to normal, we're facing drastic and historical high budget reductions. The federal government may bail us out, but we can't count on that. So I have a pretty strong background in the financial area, because that's where I started in the school business. I've guided our district through numerous waves. You'll recall about 10 years ago, we had the 470 cut per pupil. We had to rethink the way we did some of our operations. Second, and most critical, is the education of our students themselves. With this COVID-19 crisis, we cannot afford to fall behind any further. The last 3 months have been difficult enough, and the struggling learners are the ones that I'm worried about. I'm worried about all students, but the struggling learners and remote learning is a very bad combination. If you look at all the data of struggling learners, they need face-to-face instruction more than the top 50 type student. The top 50 type student can thrive in a remote and a face-to-face environment, but the struggling learners are the ones we need to concentrate. So, number one, finance. Number two, the education of our students are the most critical over the next several years.
Okay, thank you. So our next category of questions is in step with district relations, and Mr. Scott Taylor will be reading those questions.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to this Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
Scott, first of all, for a school district to be successful, the administration, school board, staff, students, parents, and community have to partner together to create that exemplary school district. We work very hard in my school district to do that. Labor relations have always been good in my school district. I have been the chief negotiator the first 16 years of my career in Armada. And before you go to the table, you have to build trust amongst all labor organizations and all employees. You also have to build trust with parents and students. And that's not going to happen overnight for me if I were to come to Armada. You have to earn trust. It takes time. But you have to build relationships, whether it's with parents, whether it's with business partners. It's the key to what we do. We are a relationship business. Our teachers, it's very important they have relationships with their students, and no different than a superintendent.
Thank you. Could you please describe how you have successfully engaged district stakeholders, including those directly involved with the school district as well as others in the community, and share how this was a benefit to your district?
Can you just repeat that one more time, the first
Certainly.
part, please?
No problem. We got lots of time. Please describe how you have successfully engaged district stakeholders, including those directly involved with the school district as well as others in the community, and share how this was of benefit to your district.
So I would say communication is key here. We put out a lot of information either on our website or our Facebook, Twitter, or emails. It's also very important, and it's going to be a challenge during the COVID-19 era, that we partner with our parents. I have openly invited parents to be part of the education process. We need countless volunteers to make our education system reach its maximum potential. We have an open door policy. I have an open door policy. If anyone has an issue or a concern, they know they can come to my office or contact any of our administrators or staff. It's very important that any of our staff members, if somebody from the community has a question, that we respond within 24 hours. We cannot let anything linger. So by having a good communication system, it leads to trust. It leads to everybody feeling they're part of the community. We do a lot of surveys also to see how people are feeling on certain subjects. We surveyed them on recently how they felt about a graduation ceremony, whether they want one ceremony with two parents or two separate ceremonies, and we can invite up to 5 guests each, things like that. So open communication is the key, I believe, to have a successful relationship with the community.
Okay. How do we create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically and aligning our operating plans to achieve strategic outcomes?
That's one of my biggest beliefs that a superintendent needs to do, is to create a culture. We need to create a culture, like I mentioned in the last answer, where we're all partnering together. And although our Armada and Lake Orion are different in size, I believe it has a family atmosphere, and that's kind of what drew me to moving here. We're all dragons in this community, and we need to be proud. I like to look at the big picture too. I'm not here just to provide an education for our students. I want them to thoroughly enjoy it socially and emotionally. And I prefer, if possible, that we keep our talent in Michigan. And I would love it if our students could move back, some of them, to Lake Orion. I raised 2 boys. One lives north of Chicago, and one recently purchased a home in Lake Orion. So that's another reason that I'm very interested. It's now personal. I'll be able to do something for my own family in the future. But we need to build that family culture where we're all on the same page. We might argue, we're going to disagree on certain things, but in the end, we're going to do what's best for each student.
Okay, thank you very much. The next group of questions are in regard to political awareness, and Nate Butke will be asking those questions.
Mr. Musary, nice to meet you. Thanks for taking time to talk with us this evening. Would love to hear from you what impact you feel the Every Student Succeeds Act legislation is having on Michigan school districts.
I think it's having a decent effect on Michigan, but whether there's legislation or not, we want every student to succeed. Michigan has not fared well when you look at national polls on our achievement, but I truly believe that if we do the best for each student every day, if we can improve each student every day, everything else is going to take care of itself. So personally, there was first No Child Left Behind, now this. The national movements do not affect what we do in general. We're going to do our best to educate every student. I mean, that's our goal. So politically, I'll have conversations with our local and state politicians on various issues. To be honest, I haven't had too much conversation on this legislation. I have on the 3rd grade reading law in Michigan, but other than that, I still feel strongly that it may be more political than not, but the concept is good. We want all students to succeed.
Thank you. What's your biggest concern regarding the political climate of education in Michigan? And as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits Lake Orion Community Schools and public education throughout our state?
Right now, currently, the biggest political landscape is finance. I was talking a couple days ago to one of our House reps over in our area, a Republican, about the funding, and he was telling me there's no money And then, so my side of the story, well, there is money. There's a rainy day fund, and you're allowed to use 25% of it this year, and you're allowed to use 25% of it next year. And we need everybody to advocate at the federal level that we receive funding for our students. There's nothing more important in our state than the education of our students. If we do a poor job there, the long-term effects will be drastic. So we're doing everything we can, Lake Orion included, to lobby for all school districts to adequately and equitably funded. If we were told a few months ago that we were to pay all of our employees, if we were told 2 months, 3 months ago that we weren't going to have this funding, we might not have paid all our employees. It didn't hurt most of us because we received the state aid foundation allowance, but if they're going to take that away, then that's like a promise unkept, which is not, it wouldn't be the first time that happened in Michigan, but it certainly would not be fair. I was in another meeting today where I'm told that there's a decent chance there may not be a proration cut for 1920. Nothing guaranteed, but it does look like $685 to $700 reduction for next school year.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit here, what impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
I guess that depends on what school district. Some districts, it's not been received very well. In my school district, we've worked very hard to make standardized testing and the evaluation process a positive thing. When I first became superintendent, I formed an evaluation committee consisting of teachers and administrators, and we knew the data component was coming as part of the evaluation. Standardized testing, we don't want to live or die by a standardized test. I think it's ridiculous to have a third grader, if they perform poorly on a M-STEP exam, to be held back. But fortunately, the parents still have a voice in that concept. But until the colleges and everybody else changes the way we're doing things like the SAT and the ACT exams are very important. So we don't teach to a test, but our philosophy is if we do right by every student every day, if we promote growth for every student every day, everything takes care of itself. Our standardized tests were very poor. Not poor, they were about, out of 21 school districts in Armada, we're about 9th or 10th in the county. Now, if we're not in the top 1, 2, or 3, we feel like we've fallen a little short. But that's not the case in every school district. I'm not exactly sure where Lake Orion stands, and I know you do very well in standardized testing, but it's not our focus. We have to take these exams every year, every spring typically. Could be the fall for this coming school year. We are data driven, so we utilize something called, I think you do too, the NWEA assessments for especially English and mathematics to see where students are. And we're going to have to be doing that in the fall because some of them may have fallen behind. But we need metrics to assess how our kids are doing. It just doesn't have to be standardized tests.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next group of questions is in regard to leadership attributes, and Dana Mermel will be asking those questions. Dana?
Hi. Nice to meet you, Mr. Musary. Thank you for your interest in Lake Orion. Our first question under leadership attributes is, please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
Okay. So I personally lead with positivity. I have a collaborative approach, but if I had to label my leadership style would be situational. I like to collect as much information when I can on making decisions, but there's going to be times when I can't and I have to make a situational decision. I have found that if you have a collaborative approach, especially with the teachers on a certain curriculum or a certain change, if they have buy-in and they're part of the process, it's going to be more successful in the long run. But there's going to be cases where I'll have to make a decision right away. I've had to make a couple of very difficult decisions during my career, and I didn't have time to collaborate. I had to rely on my expertise and my knowledge of the education law. So I guess, one example, which was very difficult for me. One of my favorite young teachers, I received a email or a phone call from the principal saying, we have a couple of students in here that are saying one of our teachers may have been doing something inappropriate. And this teacher was one of my favorite teachers. I didn't have time to collaborate. I had to act right away. I had to contact the union rep. I had to contact the police. And when I brought the teacher in, we had a conversation. Long story short, he's now serving 10 to 50 years in prison for inappropriate relationship with a 7th grade student. And it was very difficult. His mother was a elementary playground aide for us. So, there's going to be situations like that come in every superintendent's career. But even though that was very negative, the community appreciated how we responded precisely and quickly to a situation like that. But overall, I prefer to live my life positively, even during COVID-19. Most children smile 500 times a day. Adults smile maybe 50 times a day. I try to be way above average when it comes to smiling or laughing on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you. The next question. How do you lead in situations where you don't have official authority over the people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
I was in that position last week. So we had a situation. It was Blackout Tuesday for the Black Lives Matter. The next day, a former student made a knucklehead post on social media about White Wednesday or something like that. And then we started getting phone calls and emails and complaints about this issue. And these were graduates. So I have no authority over somebody that has graduated from Armada. So the only thing I could do in that situation was turn the social media posts over to the local police so they could determine whether it was a threat. The police in this case determined it wasn't a threat. Everybody has a First Amendment right to speak how they feel in certain matters. But even an hour ago, I received another email. People are appalled. There were some racist remarks made. But again, when they're not my students, I can't do anything to that individual other than what I did, turn it over to the local authorities. But we can do a better job in the future of educating our students. And I think with the national movement, it's made us all aware that we can do things much better, especially in racism.
Thank you. The final question in this category is, what are the key elements of a high-functioning board and superintendent's governance team relationship? And what are your plans for establishing and maintaining this in Lake Orion?
That's a great question. We have to be a governance team of 8, and we have to collaborate, and we don't always have to agree on every subject matter or every board policy, but we have to collaborate and do what's best for students. In any high-functioning school district, you're going to see excellent board superintendent relations. When that breaks down, So does continuous improvement. So does communication. It's just not a good situation. So I'm going to work very hard at that. What I'd like to do, if fortunate enough to be hired, I would like to sit down. I don't know if we can do it face to face. Hopefully we could, but see where I'd like to talk to each individual board member, see where your position is on education or anything, ask for your advice. I'd like to have a retreat. I don't know whether Mr. Silveri would do something like that, some kind of workshop where we could all go over board governance items such as communication. How do we put together bi-monthly board agenda items? What's the proper protocol for when people from the community have issues when they go to you? How do we treat that? How, if any board member has a question, what's the proper way to respond? So we need to work through all of that. But I've worked with over 30 school board members in Armada alone, another 20 in South Bend. And I've always had, and I've been cited for in my superintendent evaluations for excellent board superintendent relations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dana. The next group of questions is regarding instruction and curriculum, and Trustee Birgit McQuiston will be reading these questions. Birgit.
Good evening.
Hey, Birgit.
Here's my first question for you. What experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
Okay, it's a great question. I keep coming back to this, that if we do what's right for every student, we improve every student every day, it will decrease the achievement gap. But we also have to provide additional services for our challenged learners. And that starts at the elementary level. And we have to use data. At the elementary level, I mentioned we use NWEA. We also use a reading assessment where the young students read to their teachers, and then they have to explain to their teachers what they read. From that, we are able to determine what level they are at and assign them to the appropriate reading group. One other strategy that we like to utilize in Armada is a competency model, where we advance students based on standards. How are they doing on each standard? So, and that's how they're assessed, rather than giving your traditional ABC. And I think Lake Orion is doing the same thing. We assign the 1, 2, 3, 4 for our grades. At the secondary level last year, we did convert that to the ABC for transcript purposes. But we need to do, our Title I dollars are spent at the elementary level. We'll utilize them for services. Our parapros will either go into the classroom at times to help with math and language arts, or they may pull a student out once in a while. We have a walk to read program at the elementary. I think Lake Orion's is very similar. It's called WIN, something, What I Know, or something like that. Anyway, we spend 30 to 35 minutes each day at the elementary level reading. We feel it's very important to give them a solid base when they're starting out in their education career. We work hard in every subject, but math and language arts are probably the key ones that we work very hard at. It doesn't mean we don't do science, because we do. So it doesn't mean we don't do art, foreign language, and music. We do all of that, but to start out their career, we need to make sure that they have a solid foundation in the reading and the math areas. At the middle school, we do check-ins. We also have assist classes for math and English if students need it. And again, how we determine who needs what is based on the NWEA data that we assess. We kind of do the same thing at the high school level. We'll have, we call them assist classes to help them in math and language arts. We do an excellent job after school at all three of our levels. If a student needs extra help every day, Monday through Thursday, we will have teachers or parapros that will help the student. And at the high school level for math, we help all 5 days. So you have to provide the extra support for the students that are struggling. But if you have a student that's at the 50th percentile and one that's at the 90th, there's a pretty good chance that you can get the 50th to move a little farther than the 90th, and that will change the gap. So if you can move the 50th to 65 and the 90th to 95, you've closed the gap. You don't want to have a system that focuses on just the gap. You want to do right by every student. So kind of a long-winded answer, but there I go.
Okay, thank you for that. Here's my second question for you. How have you balanced the need to challenge the status quo in education through innovation and reform with maintaining and building on what is working?
It's an excellent question. We created a tagline in my school district where it's community, achievement, and innovation. We pride ourselves on being an innovative school district, as does Lake Orion. And some of the things that I utilize in Armada, I gotta be honest, I took from Lake Orion. My boys went to the multi-age Orion Oaks school, and that was basically the early onset of competency-based learning. My son Michael, who graduated in 2008, may be the first blended learner in Lake Orion history because he was a grade ahead in math. So when he went to middle school, when he got to 8th grade, he took an online math. He took math by himself. So I've seen this happen. But those are some of the innovations. We've been cited by the Michigan Department of Education as one of 14 districts for it was called Project Reimagine. We are reimagining how we do education. It can't be the way it was 10 years ago, and you're not that way in Lake Orion. You're doing a lot of progressive things, and I would like to bring that progressive and growth mindset with me to Lake Orion. Some of the things that we do involve collaboration with students, and with COVID-19 and social distancing, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we like to see our students be able to communicate and kind of defend their thought. Even at the elementary level, we'll have something called Genius Hour, where we give students a project, they work together, and they have to present it to the class. We build on these concepts through middle school and high school, or middle school programs. They have a robotics program, as does our high school and elementary, but we need to we need our students to be competent. We need them to be perseverant. We need to have them be good communicators, problem solvers, creative, collaborative, and tech savvy, especially with the remote learning. But how do you get those soft skills into each curriculum subject matter? That's the challenge that we have, and we need to find innovative ways to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. And here's my final question for you. My final, not the final. How have you addressed the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
That's That's what we do. For career readiness, we partner with different businesses and we expose our students to those businesses. We take them on field trips and we show them what's out there. I noticed right outside my subdivision, Michigan Cat is doing a lot of work. We take our students over to Michigan Cat because they are looking for students and they'll pay the entire tuition for them to get an apprenticeship. And that's just one of the examples for career readiness. On the college side, I would say 15 to 20% of our parents have gone to college. And so close to 70% of our students and their siblings are first year college students. So we do everything we can to help them with the process. We received a national award from a district magazine for our hashtag accepted program. Whenever a student is accepted to a college, we give them a t-shirt. It says hashtag accepted. But we really do a really, really good job with the universities. We bring in 9 different universities on our campus at the high school, and they talk to our kids, and basically they go through a verbal application process. So not only do our kids not have to pay an application fee for certain colleges, on those days they'll be accepted on the spot, and in several cases they'll be given scholarship money. So our counseling department does an excellent job helping our students because our parents don't really have that experience. 80% probably didn't go to college. Our community is not a poor community. We have very successful business people in our community, and a lot of them worked for the Ford plant that's nearby or one of the General Motors plants in the area. So we have very successful parents, but they didn't. In Armada, 20 years ago, college wasn't on too many students' radar, and now it is. And again, 96% of our kids go on a college of some sort, and we do everything we can to help them get there. I mean, we offer, the other big thing on the big picture thing is millennials, they have this huge college debt. We try to, our goal is to have every high school student leave Armada with at least 12 college credits. And one of the partnerships I did was with Ferris State University. Our kids can take 2-year-long classes. One's in pre-calc and the other's in English. And they can get 14 college credits sitting taking a high school class. It's been fantastic. And our AP students, the ones that do really well, some of them will leave with 30 college credits. So they're already starting out as a sophomore. And the big picture is they do not have college debt. And that's a big thing to me, that we help our students, because that's one of the crippling factors of our economy is if kids have to pay their student loans rather than invest into the economy.
All right, thank you. The next category is in the area of finance, and Jake Singer will be asking those questions. Jake?
Is anybody here, Jake?
Sorry about that. Had you muted from my keyboard. So hello, Mr. Musary.
Jake, you're looking good. Last board meeting I watched, you were looking a little different. So you're looking good tonight.
I cleaned myself up for the interviews. Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
I have a finance background, so I'm a non-traditional superintendent. I've been doing finance and budgeting my entire career. in fact, in Armada, I still do the budget. That's one piece of my old job that I hung on to. Budget cuts, I don't know where to start. Funding has always been a challenge in our business. You know, the next several years, it's going to take it to a new level. But I've done some creative things over the years to help with our budgeting. Recently, I would say when I took over as superintendent, we had a site-based model. So our high school was on a trimester with 5 courses. Our middle school had 7 courses, and we also have a math science academy that had 6 classes per day. So it was mixed, and so our staffing was a little bit heavy. We put everybody to a 6-period day. We're still on trimesters, but that allowed us to be a little more efficient. All my schools are basically on one campus, which is real nice. So sometimes we'll probably have 9 to 10 teachers that will teach in multiple buildings, and they only have to walk across the street. So when I took over as superintendent, we had 110 teachers. By doing some restructuring, we were able to get to 90 in a few years with minimal layoffs. We only had about 1 or 2 layoffs. Other issues that have helped, and over the years with budgeting, we passed a sinking fund, as Lake Orion did. Lake Orion has a 2 mil sinking fund. Ours is 0.85. I'm a little jealous, but that's relieved the maintenance budget. In 2015, we passed a technology bond, which also helped relieve our general fund. But more importantly, we're now prepared for this blended learning model because we have plenty technology. And then in 2017, we passed a district building and site budget, and part of that budget had $1 million for school buses, and that area is obviously normally coming out of the general fund, but we've been able to offset some cost over the years, which was very important because we were able to settle a 5-year teacher contract, giving everybody steps and everybody raises for 5 consecutive years, which is very important in our industry because it can't sustain years of stagnant salaries because our teachers are underpaid. They need to have light at the end of their tunnel too because they do so much. We've had buyouts in the past. I personally don't like buyouts where they're at the end of the year. We haven't done one in a while. When we did do a buyout, we did it at the beginning of January, and how we structured that was we negotiated with the teacher union to have a long-term sub for the last 90 days of the school year. So the buyout amount we paid was basically equivalent to the amount they would have earned the rest of the school year. But with a long-term sub, we actually had actual savings. If you do it at the end of the year where you're just buying people out, it doesn't save you money in the long run at all. But that was another area. Of course, looking at efficiencies, eliminating waste. I don't like, we didn't outsource much. We do outsource our substitute teachers, but most of our employees are employees. We do outsource non-staff coaches, but we have looked at that area as well. But bottom line is when I took over, we had about as superintendent, we had about a 1% fund equity. We're now close to 10%. Over 8 years. It took me 8 years to get there.
What opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? In tough financial times, what are your top 3 priorities?
My top 3 priorities in tough economic times are to not eliminate programs, to to work, well, my another priority would be to lobby our legislature and House and Senate reps for adequate funding. That would be a priority. And the third priority in tough economic times would be, you think a finance guy could answer this question, Jake? It's important not to eliminate programs. But we're going to have to tighten the belt. So we're going to have to look at what's nice to have versus what do we need. So we really have to reassess our entire budget. Problem is 85% of our budget's people. So there's not a lot of fat in school district budgets these days. We've done a very good job being as efficient as possible. One thing that will be coming is lobbying for equitable funding. My school district is the lowest foundation allowance district in the state. Lake Orion is a little higher, but we still need to lobby for equitable funding. I wasn't real happy with the CARES Act money that they gave to school districts recently. All of us school districts need PPE, and we all need to do all the cleaning and do everything we need for technology, but they distributed the money on Title I, which in theory sounds good, but we all need really the same amount of funding. So if there's another, I've been lobbying my legislators, if there's another round of CARES Act, we do not want it. We need it to be per student, so all students have equal access to the federal dollars.
And the last question in the finance area is, what ideas might you explore to develop more revenue streams for Lake Orion Community Schools? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district in your career?
Yes, sir. I know Lake Orion is 10% school of choice, and we need to make sure that we maintain that level. And I believe your window has closed for school of choice. In the future, we may want to, if we're having trouble with the 10% level, we may want to extend our open enrollment period. We extend our open enrollment period all the way to the fall. In Armada, we have just under 2,000 students total, but 500 of our students are school of choice from 20 different school districts. So we do a little bit of advertising for that. You drive up on I-69, you're going to see a billboard. This time of year, we used to have a commercial that ran on Channel 4, WDIV, for a couple of weeks. And if you go over to a local theater over in Chesterfield, Michigan, before every movie, you're going to see an Armada commercial. Now, that's been closed for 3 months, and we didn't do a commercial because of COVID-19, because I usually put about 100 of my students in the TV commercials that run. The billboard's actually been more successful than we really thought. I mean, the first year we did it, when you fill out a school of choice, we had 7 people saw a billboard. I mean, that only cost us about $2,500 to do that billboard, and 7 students times 8,000 is a lot more than what we paid. So, and those students stay for a while. So if we have to do advertising in the future, it might be worth it. I don't think because of Lake Orion's reputation, you're going to have to work as hard as I do in that area. But the fact that we have a fourth of our budget from students outside the school district boundaries kind of tells a story. It was interesting. We went through the strategic planning process in 2016, and we changed our mission statement to include, we want to be a destination district. Now, that destination word in our mission statement was a big thing because it means we accept and we promote school of choice. So we have an unlimited cap, but it does allow us to have great offerings. We can offer pretty much any AP class we want these days, and it allows us to pay the bills and educate more students. So that's probably the most creative way. The bond issues save money, the sinking fund saves money, but by building a great school district, by having a great academic school district, the reputation we have, people want to come as students, and people want to come as staff as well. People want to work in Armada. I have many of my new hires have several years of experience. They just want to be in a school district that focuses on academics. But we're coming along in extracurriculars too, though.
Great, thank you very much. We have one final category, and that's related to staff and personnel, and Mr. Steve Dracos will be handling that. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Weedman. Sir, welcome. You got a great reputation from where you come from, and also thank you for all you do in Lake Orion for the community and for our school district. My first question is, please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team. So more of a team type of question. I'll repeat the question. Please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
Well, I have a high-performing administrative team that leads to a high-performing school district. So, and also have high-performing teachers. So, the easiest way to have high performers is during the hiring process. You have to do an excellent job on doing the hiring of any position in the school district. It leads to talent. Talent leads to results. But when I first took over as superintendent, to make sure my administrative team was going to function well, I hired Vicky Markovich, who was at the time Oakland ISD superintendent. Vicky and I had a relationship because when I worked in Indiana, she worked pretty close. In fact, she actually worked in my hometown of Mishawaka, Indiana, as a superintendent down there. So we got to know each other a little bit. She helped us. We had a workshop with my administrators, and she brought us together. We did different tasks during the workshop, and she found all of our interests, and we put it on the table. We saw where everybody was coming from, and we developed mutual respect. I mean, most of us knew each other, but we hadn't worked together in this format. We were really site-based before I took over as superintendent, and I wanted the team approach. In fact, when we did the strategic plan, one of our mantras is to be one Armada. We have the largest elementary building in the state, physical building. It's large. It's close to 130,000 square feet. And for years, it was two schools under one roof. One wing was early elementary, the other wing was later elementary, and each wing had their own principal. After going through the strategic planning process, we became one building. We had one principal and one assistant principal. There was no additional cost because we still had two individuals, but now our building staff felt more connected, and the collaboration amongst grades is fantastic, and that's a key to a successful curriculum. So it takes work. It takes work to get there, but I truly believe in the team concept. we will do instructional rounds where we'll bring high school teachers to look at middle school and elementary classrooms, and vice versa. We'll take elementary teachers to look at middle school and high school. And so we're all part of the same team. And we've worked very hard for the community. We've worked very hard for the staff to be one team and one cohesive unit.
Well, thank you for the detailed explanation and answer. If I can move on to the second question I have for you, sir, is please speak to your experience in labor relations and working with employee unions and describe the nature of your relationship with the union leaders.
Okay, so my career in negotiating began in South Bend, Indiana. South Bend, we had 1,400 teachers, and during the negotiation process for the teacher contract, right in the middle of it, we had an 11-day teacher strike. So the problem was we had 700 of the teachers were on strike, and the other 700 stayed. The 700 teachers that stayed got extra pay for additional class size covering. So it was very contentious. We did settle the contract, and after that, I was able to work with the healing process. And I'm sure even after I left, there were some scars. But I came to Armada. I was the chief negotiator for the first 16 years in Armada when I was the assistant superintendent. I developed relationships with all union leadership. I developed relationships with as many staff members as possible. So when we got to the negotiation table, there was trust. If I explained the budget to them, they were in favor of it. They know that I'm going to do everything I can to give them a fair raise. Because, again, I truly believe that our business can't survive with years of step freezes and pay freezes, because we've already seen what happens. Less people go into teaching. There's a huge teacher shortage. But getting back to my negotiation, I've always had excellent relationship with our unions, and I do believe we have an outstanding labor relations in my district, and that's pretty much one of the reasons I was promoted to superintendent back in 2012.
Thank you. My final question would be, how would you interact with central administrators and building principals in a district of our size here in Lake Orion? And how would you strike a balance between giving them the support and autonomy that they need to lead effectively while holding them accountable as appropriate and necessary?
So even though Lake Orion has 7,500 students and I have 2,000, I still do not micromanage my principals now. And I wouldn't micromanage principals, but I would have at least a monthly meeting with all of my principals during the school year. I need to hear their voice, and I need their leadership, because they're the ones on the front line. They're working with the teachers. They're working with the students. It's very important that we feel Lake Orion is not a large school district. Lake Orion is basically sized just right. The high school is large, but we have enough resources that we should be working together, especially at the elementary level, that now that all of the schools are basically on the same curriculum. It's important that we get together on a monthly basis and see what areas we are working, what needs improvement, and where do we want to go in the future. We do that. I do that now in Armada. Obviously, I don't have the staff as many employees as Lake Orion, but it is important, no matter what size you are, to have good communication. And there's a lot of degrees in our business, and there's no reason why everyone can't have a voice. It's important to me that everyone feels they have a voice.
Thank you, sir. Well said.
Thank you. So we're asking all the questions, and this is an opportunity if you have any questions from us, or if you would like to just share some closing.
I just have a couple questions, and it's kind of personal, but
Sure.
four of you are up for re-election. Is there anyone not running for school board come this November?
I guess that's the people who are up for re-election.
Right. According to the website, four board members are up for
Correct.
re-election, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody rerunning?
I've not made a commitment yet.
Okay. Fair enough.
It sounds like 3 out of 4 are definites, and 1 is a maybe. Would that be safe?
Yeah, we're trying to talk him into it.
All right.
Well, I've been watching your board meetings for several months now, and you are cohesive. You work together. Sometimes you do not agree, but that's okay. I mean, difference of opinion is important too, but you professionally work through it, and whoever you pick as superintendent will be fortunate, because the key to any successful school district is having a top governance team of 8, being the superintendent and the school board. So, all right. I don't really, well, I have one more question.
Sure.
We utilize competency-based education strategies in Armada, and about 20% of our students are above grade level in 1 or 2 subjects. And we primarily focus on math and language arts. I know you no longer have the magnet schools, the year-round or the multi-age or the fine arts school. Do students, if they are top level students, can they advance to a next level, and if they're able to here?
I'd like to go to Birgit as part of the curriculum committee on that one, if she would be so kind.
I've never looked at our focus schools, is what we called them, as being something for higher achieving kids. Those were a draw for a different way to promote the curriculum that every other building had in Lake Orion elementary schools. But differentiated teaching occurs in our classrooms. And you were right, we do have standards-based grading going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the differentiated for students who are higher achievers, it starts occurring in 5th grade, as far as class opportunity is available. And then, of course, into the middle school, and the spectrum is broad in high school for keeping students challenged academically. And it isn't even limited to the high school. It can go, if you qualify for a class at OU, when we can no longer offer you a class in math that challenges you, then you will be at a class in OU. So we have a broad spectrum of what we offer and challenge for our students.
You do. Well, that's good to hear. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Weidman.
Okay. Well, we have a few minutes remaining. If you would you like to share anything else with tonight? Sure.
So, looking at your candidate profile, you have 18 different categories. I believe I hit all 18. But if I were to pick the top 3 that are important to me, or important to Lake Orion for the next few years, I would pick is confident with courage to stand up to pressure, stick to principles, and make difficult decisions. What's best for students. The next couple years are going to be real difficult with the coronavirus and the challenges. And you're going to need somebody courageous to come in, somebody that's gone through multiple challenges over their career to navigate through this. The other one is a unifying presence who builds a positive, inclusive culture and climate. That's probably the most important thing to me, is to build a great culture in a school district. If you're going to have a great culture, you're going to have a lot of support. And when we're all on the same page, great things are going to happen. And the final point I would like to make is, has a track record of proven, measurable success. They say in the NFL, you are what your record is. So in education, my track record's pretty good when it comes to measurable success. I inherited a very good district and I made it better. Academically, we're doing well across the board. And when you leave Armada High School, our students are set up for success. I would like to see us partner a little more with industry to give high school students, they don't necessarily have to take classes in their career interest, but we need to provide them guidance in career interest. And I know Lake Orion is doing that. They're doing it much better than when my kids were here with the new software that you recently have. We have a career navigator in Armada that we're able to pay for through a grant, and that's been very successful for us. It allows students to really focus at the high school level on what they want to be when they leave here. If I can save students money in the future, that's important to me by having them earn some kind of college credit. If they're not going to a traditional 2-year community college or 4-year university, I want to help them find places where in the building trades, because building trades are looking for people and they're going to pay for your education. It's really important to me that future graduates of Lake Orion aren't strapped with debt. I'm kind of a big picture guy. I really appreciate this opportunity to interview tonight. No matter who you choose, I'll be forever grateful that I had this opportunity because it means a lot to me.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your interest in the position. And as you, I'm sure, know, we're interviewing 6 candidates. We will be interviewing 2 people each night, the next 3 nights. And on Thursday evening, the board will meet to determine 2 candidates who will move on to a second interview. We appreciate your participation in this first round, and thank you for spending time with us tonight.
You guys have a great evening. Thank you very much.
You do the same. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Good night. All right, so we will move on to conclude our meeting this evening and recap the next steps. John, did you want to add anything to this conversation before we close?
No, we have not really. We have the next 2 nights scheduled to go exactly the same as tonight did, as you know, and where we'll need to have a little bit more dialogue, I think, is Wednesday night after the final interview, just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what it will look like when we get back together on Thursday to decide who the finalists will be in this process.
Okay, very good. Final comments. This one's going to be easy. There's not many of you here. Anybody raise your hand if you have a final comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. I'll see everybody tomorrow night, same time, same station. All right, good night.